Welcome into this episode of Frogs Insider. Jamie Plunkett here alongside Melissa Treebwasser, bringing you all of the latest information regarding TCU athletics. Melissa, first episode of 2024. How are we feeling?
Spicy. I think we're both feeling pretty spicy right now.
Absolutely.
I think we both got the national championship game here on in the background.
True.
We're still a little bitter from Saturday's basketball events on
It's
both the
true.
men's and the women's side. And you opened it up by saying we were going to talk about Portal Madness, and I know that gets just about everybody fired up. So the
Really
theme of
does.
2024 TCU athletics is definitely spicy.
It is spicy. And there are some legitimate things I think we can talk about on this episode that will have people feeling one way or another. Before we dive into all of it, though, a shout out as always to Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Republic of Football Network, of which we are a part. We are the TCU branded site for that podcast network. You can go anywhere you search your podcasts or get your podcasts and search for Republic of Football Network, and you'll find our feed where you can get a podcast related to every D1 program in the state of Texas, which, in my opinion, is pretty freaking cool because it
Very.
covers not only us and SMU and Tech and A&M, but Rice and Sam Houston State and UTSA and UTEP and North Texas, and just covering all of college football in the state of Texas is pretty dope.
Yeah.
Also, big thanks to Hell's Half Acre and Home Field Apparel, our lovely show sponsors who are with us every week as well. I'm sure we'll talk about them a little bit later on in the program. But right now, Melissa, we got to get into some craziness here. And I'm going to preface this conversation because I know one of our faithful listeners every week is David Bowden, the great Coach Bowden.
Wonderful, Coach Bowden.
And for those of you who are listening who are not David Bowden, he and I tried to record a segment similar to this earlier this week, but technology, as it is so frequently in he and I's relationship, was against us. And the recording corrupted, and we cannot use that audio or video, and it's very sad and disappointing. So you and I are going to have a similar conversation, and hopefully at
Yeah,
some
and it's
point in
going
the
to be
near
not
future,
nearly as
well,
good as Bowden, but that's okay. We're going to do our
hopefully,
best.
hopefully at some point in the near future, we can have Coach Bowden on to have that conversation with us because he did provide what I thought was some really good insight from a coaching perspective on what we're going to talk about here right now. But we're going to hit the portal. We're going to talk about men's hoops and that game in Kansas, which was an instant classic that is marred by poor officiating. And then what does the injury to Sedona Prince do to this women's hoops season? Is it over? Is there hope? Is it somewhere in between? We're going to kind of suss all of that out on the show today. But Melissa, I want to jump in and ask you this question because TCU has seen in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, really, a couple of players from the transfer portal who had committed to TCU and who had signed financial aid paperwork, meaning that they were announced as part of the signing class on early signing day. They did the photo shoot, their names were on the website, right? Everything that are going to go somewhere else, right? You have Donovan Saunders, the cornerback from Cal Poly, who went through that process with TCU and then recently flipped and decided that he's going to go to Texas A&M. You have the offensive lineman Howard Sampson from North Texas, who did the same thing, except now he's going to North Carolina. And so the question is, with all that is good about name, image, and likeness and this freedom of movement in the transfer portal, is there a solution to the seemingly impossible task of managing a roster?
I mean, I think the first thing I want to say is I want to know how many TCU fans knew Cal Poly had a football team
Oof, good question.
before Donovan Saunders decided to commit to TCU, because not many. And the fact that TCU and A&M are fighting over a corner from Cal Poly just has me feeling all kinds of ways, knowing what I know about Cal Poly football. And I think the kid's really good. I think he's
Oh,
really,
very
really good.
good. Yes.
And he's going to be great. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's still Cal Poly football. It's unbelievable to me. I think that at some point, as this system probably collapses and resets, which is what we're obviously moving towards, and I think college football as we know it obviously doesn't look like it did 3 years ago, and probably won't look like it does today 3 years from now. And Sonny Dykes really gave great voice to this a year ago, ahead of the national championship game, is that the calendar because of the portal, because of the changes in recruiting, high school recruiting has gotten completely and totally out of hand. And I think that the first thing that you have to look at is, when is the portal open? When does it close? And when is a transfer student fully committed? And, obviously they sign their financial aid paperwork, but until they are enrolled in class, that is not a binding decision. And so do you look at doing something more along the lines that you do at the high school level and making that a binding decision? Is that fair to do for a transfer? Do you cap the number of transfers? We've seen that come and go. That's probably not the solution. Or, as a lot of people now are starting to posit, do you put these kids on employment contracts and make that commitment, just like it does for most people in the workforce, is that once you sign with the school or you sign an NIL deal, now you're on a contract. And if you don't meet certain expectations, you don't see the payout from that contract. I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. I think that the NCAA desperately, or at least not, if not the NCAA, the SEC and the Big Ten, who are ultimately going to be the decision makers here, want to desperately avoid unionizing and allowing unions by student athletes. And so maybe making them employees and contracted employees by the football teams is probably what we're going to see them push for. But I think there has to be something that's written in pen in order for programs to take back the control that they so desperately want, while still being able to look like they are doing right by the student athletes. Or let's
Totally.
just call them
Yeah.
athlete students.
Yeah.
Now, let's be
They're
honest.
they're
Yeah.
athletes. They're athletes. We've if we're not there yet, we are very close to
Mhm.
moving beyond the concept of student athlete, which I think has always indicated some level of amateurism that is quickly leaving
Yeah.
sports at the college level, especially in football and men's basketball to an extent as well. But I think you're right, and I think I'm there. This is kind of where I got with Bowden the other day when we failed at recording an episode. Was um, I think I'm to the point now where I would just like to see some sort of governing body, whether that's the NCAA, federal regulators, or a new body that comes out of whatever happens next with college football.
Please not federal
Say,
regulators. They've got other
no,
things they need to be worried
obviously
about, but
they're doing anything they can to not focus on big issues right now.
yeah.
So maybe college football will get some answers soon. But there's I think I'm to the point where whatever the governing body is, and whoever is ultimately in charge in the near future, needs to do two things. First of all, they need to remove the third party restriction for name, image, and likeness,
Mhm.
and allow universities to compensate student athletes directly. I said student athletes. Allow universities to compensate their athletes directly, because the fact that this whole NIL system has been pawned off on the fan and not the universities that are
Mhm.
making tens, if not hundreds of $1 millions annually is a joke, right? Because now you're fundraising from fans for new facilities. You're fundraising from fans for other amenities on campus. You're expecting fans to pay for a PSL and then buy premium seating in your stadium for season tickets. And now you're asking them to also pay the student athletes. Feels like a little bit of an imbalance in financial expectations is being placed on the fan base at this point. So, point one, shifting that financial responsibility to the university, not third party NIL organizations. The second thing is linking an NIL contract with essentially making an NIL contract a binding agreement between a player and a university, and allowing it to be anywhere from 1 to 4 years in length.
Mhm.
So if you're a small school where you find a talented kid who's maybe a diamond in the rough, didn't get rated appropriately, wasn't looked at like he should have been, like we see so often in college athletics. He knows maybe, hey, I'm gonna get a chance a year or two down the road to really make some hay and maybe make some even better money at a bigger school. But I'm gonna sign with Sam Houston State for 1 year and get 50K or whatever it is. That sounds great. But once you sign on the dotted line with Sam Houston State, that's where you're going to spend your freshman
Yeah.
year, right? You're obligated from the moment pen meets paper to play your freshman year at Sam Houston State. You want to go to Bama and sign a 4-year deal? Congratulations on your money, big dog. But also, Alabama, you signed that guy to a 4-year deal. he ain't going to hit the transfer portal because you signed him to a 4-year deal. That's kind of my solution, is finding a way to link NIL contracts with not only a binding contract to the school, but also transfer portal eligibility. You are not eligible to enter the transfer portal until your NIL contract is over, right?
Yeah.
So you're Georgia, you got these 5 stars. You say, you want to come to Georgia? Here's a 3-year contract, right? You want to come to Bama, Ohio State, Michigan? Here's a 3-year contract. But a TCU, a Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State might be, hey, you're not sure about the 3-year deal over there? Here's a 1-year deal. Here's a 2-year deal. I think that creates a level of parity, and I think that creates a level of security, not only from a player standpoint, but from a roster management and university standpoint, that we simply are not seeing in the current climate today.
It would be fascinating because you could start talking about buyouts. Like, is there going to be a clause if your coach gets fired or quits, or at least, I mean, these would be so technical. And I mean, it would be probably like the illegal staffs that schools would have to pay for. One of the things I also think is going to be really interesting, because I think I completely agree with you. I think that's the direction we're going to end up ultimately going. You might see a kicker. If you sign for more years, you get more money, it's going to be fascinating. But one of the things that's going to be interesting is if the onus ultimately falls on universities to pay these NIL contracts, or at least pick up the majority of them. How are they going to determine where that money comes out? Because I see a lot of people, and I see this a lot in the TCU fan base, of saying, throw all of your money and all of your financial support to TCU football.
Right.
I love TCU football. I do not want that to be what I put all of the TCU's resources to. I think that at the end of the day, we're going to have to see a separation from football, probably not the other sports, but football is going to have to be its own entity, its own LLC, however you want to scheme it up here. But because I think that people need to have you still want to invest in the university. You go to, when I was TCU, we were very, very bad at football. I didn't go to TCU because of TCU football. I wanted to go to a university with Division I athletics. But I think it's important that TCU still gets supported as a, I know we're all decided watching to see if was that an interception.
It was a pick, and Michael Penix is hurt. So everything is great.
Everything is wonderful.
Oh God.
So watch a game that will have already happened live with,
that was a pick.
It's probably a pick. But yeah, are you going to be able to separate that? Are people still going to be able to choose, because I think the work that TCU is doing outside of football is infinitely more important, but most of our connection to TCU comes with athletics. And so how do you find a balance as a university to make sure that you are still being true to your roots as a university and still advancing your mission as a university, while understanding that football is a big part of the reason that you have that opportunity in the first place? It's going to be so interesting. It's going to be fascinating, but I think we both agree that something absolutely has to change, because it's unfair to the coaches, and you're going to see more and more good coaches leave the college game because it has become so much more than a full-time job. And they should not be having to spend so much time and energy chasing their own players down, chasing transfers down, chasing recruits down, doing all of the things that have become so much more, the game has become so much more about than the actual thing that happens on, Saturdays.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know if I want to get into this fully on this episode, because we do want to get to some hoops talk here, but I think I'm also fully on board with an idea that started, I believe, with Stephen Godfrey, he of Split Zone Duo, Washington Post, and Bagman fame, not necessarily in that order, where he proposed moving bowl season, as the playoff expands and grows, moving bowl season to the beginning of the year and making them invitational exhibition games as week 0 games. Because how much better would the Sun Bowl have been if all those Notre Dame players had played?
Yeah.
How much better would bowl season be if there were no opt-outs and the games actually meant something still, right? And that has the benefit of doing 3 different things. First, it creates a little bit more interest in non-conference matchups that maybe won't happen all the time. And you're talking about all of those lower tier bowls that maybe struggle to sell out in December. Fans haven't had football in 6 months in the middle of August. Yeah, they're going to go to that football game if they're close, if they're in town. Second of all, you're avoiding all of the opt-outs that have really done a number on bowl season, as good as they are for the players who are trying to protect their health ahead of what might be a lengthy pro career. And then third, it clears up the December calendar because you already have this chaotic month of, well, this coach left, but the team made a bowl game. Who's going to coach there? Where's this player going to transfer? What kids are they going to sign from high school? Just the mass chaos that happens in December generally would be cleared up if you moved some of those games out of December and put them at the beginning of the year.
The negative to that, though, is that when I want to watch SMU lose to Boston College at a baseball stadium in a rainy, terrible, disgusting day on a random ass Thursday morning at 9 a.m., I can do it. And you're going to take
Yeah.
that away from me?
I'm
That's
just going to move it. No, it's just going to happen on August 18th instead of December 7th or whatever.
yeah. I think that also makes a lot of sense. I do think that you would lose some of the cachet that you get for some of these bowls. Like I don't know that the Pop-Tart Bowl is going to have that level of intrigue for the reasons that it had that level of intrigue,
Sure.
right? Because the game is going to become so much more important. And part
Mm-hmm.
of what makes bowl season fun is that we get super fired up about mascot transmorphifying, is that the word,
Sure.
something like that. I don't think that's correct, but I'm gonna get roasted for that. But transfiguring maybe into an edible thing, and a mayo bath is
Are you
probably
talking
not
about
happening.
transubstantiation?
Is that it might be transubstantiation. It might
You're
be,
talking
that might have
about
been the word.
the bread and the wine becoming the
Yeah,
body and the
yeah.
blood. Yeah,
This is where I have to bring the pastor in.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So that thing, I shouldn't have even tried. But yeah. So, and you're like, I don't know that anybody's gonna be willing to have a vat of mayo dumped on them in August. That's gonna hit different.
Gross.
So you will lose some of that, but that's not what ultimately matters, right? I think
True.
it matters for the games. It matters for impressions and for marketability. But at the end of the day, if you have more meaningful football games, that part's probably going to take care of itself.
Well, here's how you fix that part of the issue is you simply make the Mayo Bowl, the Cheez It Bowl, the Pop Tart Bowl quarterfinals in the playoffs every single year.
Hmm.
Right. So those sponsored themed bowls with the edible mascots and the mayo bath
Only edible bowls.
mean
Only,
more.
yes. Yeah.
Mean more. Actually, yes, it should be a requirement for every single playoff game to have an edible mascot, and B, some sort of substance that is not Gatorade or water dumped on a coach or player at the end of the game.
Now let me ask you this, Jamie. Let me play devil's advocate. Oh God, I really should just stay away from anything religiously. I'm obviously a little bit rusty. The Catholics don't read the Bible, so I don't know
Nobody
anything
does
about this.
anymore. It's
Yeah.
fine.
It's a different episode. But do you think that we might see some of these opt-outs and some of these coaching moves happen earlier in the season, though? Because if you know on November 15th that your team is not going to make the playoffs, you're not competing for a conference championship, we could potentially see kids say, okay, I'm done. I don't want to play. I don't want to get hurt. We've got nothing to play for. I mean, you could have a lot of teams that know they have absolutely nothing to play for very, very early in the season. And that could really change the dynamics of what November looks like for college football as well.
It could, but at the same time, you're once again clearing up the schedule as you get closer and closer to early signing day because now a team that is going to go 3-9 is not obligated to hang on to a head coach that they know they're going to fire
Yeah.
anyways. And then they're not going to have to A, stress about replacing him, B, worry about holding on to the signing class, C, try to hold on to guys on the current roster and hit the portal and do all of the other things that come with hiring a new coaching staff, all within the span of 2.5 weeks before the early signing period.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think it still clears the road a little bit more to say the season's not going well. We're either going to start our coaching search right now or kind of communicate to the people that matter that this coaching search is going to start right at the end of the season. And you have a clear runway to take care of that business. And it just feels like things might be a little bit more organized.
Yeah. The biggest thing obviously is going to be getting the Big Ten and the SEC to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
If those two, because we can all act like the Big 12 is in good shape, and it's in good shape, but it's not in the SEC or Big Ten shape. And those two, governing bodies are going to be making the major decisions for college football in the foreseeable future, barring them completely separating themselves from the sport in general, which I also could fully see happen here in the next 5 years. So,
yes,
I think the TLDR of this is obviously something has to change.
mm-hmm.
I think people recognize that things have to change. I think decision makers across the sport and across the media landscape recognize that things have to change. The question is going to be, what's the next domino that's going to fall that enacts that change? And then how quickly does that change come to fruition over the course of the next several years, while there is still so much in flux in the sport as a whole?
True. Very true. It's a good point. And, we just, I'm hesitant to get attached to any new system or structure
Yeah.
because it feels like everything is going to change in a major way, at least
Yeah.
4 or 5 years down the road.
Let me ask you one last question to put a button on this. Do
Mhm.
you believe college football needs a commissioner?
Yes.
Yeah.
The best proposed structure that I have heard so far has come from Chip Kelly. I think what
Yeah,
he
he
has
was
said
great. He was
is
brilliant.
brilliant. You keep all of your regional conferences, and every single football team is independent. You create your own schedule. You have a 64 team, 124 team, whatever it is, but everybody's independent. In football only, you have a commissioner for football who manages football related issues. Everything else stays under the NCAA and regional conferences. It makes too much sense. So it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's the model that I would like to see with a commissioner for college football.
Completely agree.
Yeah. All right, Melissa.
Hey.
Before we move on, I do want to give a shout out to Home Field Apparel, one of our wonderful sponsors. They have been doing an incredible job around bowl season and the playoffs. You've got your Rainbow Warriors Hawaii shirt on. And last time we recorded, Melissa, I told you that I did the mystery hoodie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is that?
I am currently wearing
Excellent.
said mystery hoodie.
I had some questions about your Mizzou hoodie.
A Missouri Tigers hoodie. I have not shown this to my Arkansas father yet. Because he might have a heart attack. But yeah. I am wearing this very comfortable Missouri hoodie. It was like 50% off of hoodies at homefieldapparel.com for that day. They do this promotion multiple times a year. So if you're thinking, I would like a Home Field Apparel hoodie, but A, they're a little pricey, and B, I don't really care what design I get. There are so many great ones to pick from. Do the mystery hoodie day. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm living proof of that right now.
I've done some mystery hoodies. I've done some mystery t-shirts. Those are also good. Yeah, you can. And yeah, like I said, you're not going to get a bad one because they don't make anything bad at Home Field.
I believe you own some Baylor stuff, right?
No. I have a line. There might be one. And listen, that kicking Mustang.
Hang on. Was it the mystery package?
I am going to my own protection. Go ahead and plead the fifth here. I neither confirm nor deny your accusation. But I will say I did draw the line. I have not bought anything Texas. I have not bought anything Baylor, even though, listen, the Texas and Baylor collections are outstanding. But no, I won't do it. I do have a line. SMU they don't really bother me. So I didn't.
Not a rival.
Yeah, not a rival. God, do we want to laugh at them really quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's laugh at them. You had a great tweet, a very popular tweet. So
1.5 million impressions. Yeah. So I did not, and I got accused of this in the DMs. Oh my gosh, you read the Florida State lawsuit document to find ways to dunk on SMU. No.
Because you have time for that. Jamie,
no, I didn't.
Have so much time.
I read the 38-page lawsuit that Florida State filed last month because it was a newsworthy college athletics story, and I thought we might talk about it on the podcast. And I've been trying to keep track of expansion and realignment stuff at the college level. I've been talking to several folks about that over the last year, basically. And I thought I'd like to read that and then be an informed participant in the conversation, right? That's an important thing, in my opinion, is to read things and be informed. Well, when I stumbled upon the absolute body bag that Florida State put SMU in on like pages 17 through 24, I'm going to take a screenshot of it and have a good laugh at SMU's expense on the Bird app.
As one does.
Like, I mean, here's the thing. Florida State did not miss in their accusations about SMU, saying that they were not the best available team to add to the conference, that they, in fact, devalued the conference, that they made no sense, that the fact that they were willing to be unpaid interns essentially was an indicator of that unworthiness to be a part of the ACC, and that the ACC, in a desperate move to keep other teams of higher value locked into this long-term grant of rights, did something that was not in the best interest of the conference. All of those things are true.
Very true.
All of those things are true. It doesn't matter that it hurts SMU fans' feelings, all 13 of them or whoever, but
And for the people that are going to say that they live rent free in our heads because we're talking about them, no, listen, that's what makes regional rivalries in college football great. That's why Chip Kelly is right, is because, yes, I'm going to pay attention to the school that's 35 miles from TCU, that wants to be TCU, that has wanted to do all of the things that TCU has gotten to do over the last 25 years and has rarely been able to beat TCU. And when they do something stupid or they get absolutely dunked on, then heck yeah, I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to laugh about it. And I'm going to want to bring light to it. They don't live rent free in my head, but when they come into the public perception and the rare occasions that people are talking about SMU football and it's funny, by all means, am I going to pass along that humor for my college football brethren that choose to also want to laugh at SMU.
And it turns out when you make it publicly known that you are willing to sell yourself for free, other people are going to try and take advantage of your freeness as well. Because one of the latest things that's been reported by Ross Dellinger over at Sports Illustrated, who, if you're not following Ross, you're not actually following college football realignment, because he is, in my opinion, the most informed, most consistently accurate guy on all of this stuff. But he reported a couple weeks ago, and then it came back up today on Monday as the College Football Playoff Commission was meeting again. It is not a given that SMU will receive the full P5 College Football Playoff payout that goes to every P5 school. This is something that has been done in the past for schools that are moving to a Power 5 conference, is that they've received the full conference payout from the College Football Playoff, but SMU did not have the votes. Didn't have the votes to get the $6 million instead of the $1 million that G5 schools get.
So wonderful.
And SMU fans might be upset about this, but hey, you just advertised that you were free, right? Free services, no cost to playing with us. So why would these conference commissioners vote to give you money that you clearly have already said, no, we don't need it. We've got a guy who's going to give us $200 million. We don't need your money. We'll play for free. Okay, great. We'll give that $6 million to Florida State so they get off our ass for 2 days. Like, what are we doing? And in between these two things, SMU lost to 6-6 Boston College.
Yeah.
On the football field. In a football game. To a quarterback that I don't think completed a single pass.
Oh, but man, he was fun to watch. I have some BC in the family, so I enjoyed that game tremendously. Watching that with my brother-in-law, who's an alum, and my sister who went to grad school there. It was an absolute delight. In between my niece asking for more Coco Melon,
Shout out Coco Melon. Actually, no, burn Coco Melon to the ground.
Yeah, don't shout out Coco Melon at all.
Terrible.
All right,
let's jump in.
Burn to the ground.
The Big 12 officiating offices, Big 12 headquarters.
Yeah. Man, listen, we said this before we started recording. Neither one of us wants to sit there and blame officiating, but you cannot have things consistently happen in that arena around officiating in close games and not I jumped on with Andy Mitz of the Rock Chalk Pod and he and I kind of made a comment about the officiating and I was like, if this is a close game, it can't come down to the officials. TCU can't be in a position where the officials can impact it. And he was like, oh, it's confirmation bias. But bro, there's confirmation bias and then there's flat out confirmation. And according to every single person on social media and every single commentator on the broadcast, and Gene Steratore, the officials guru, and Fran Fraschilla, and all of these very well-respected people across college football, college basketball, and also every other fan base outside of Kansas. I mean, freaking Barstool wrote an article about it.
Yes.
About TCU getting screwed by the officiating. So obviously there are bad calls throughout the game. Some calls absolutely went TCU's way at part, TCU's gotten the benefit of a really, really terrible call earlier this season against Georgetown. But to see we went over this ad nauseum here before we started recording, but they had no right to stop the play. Micah PV
Right.
slightly turning his head backwards is not enough to constitute a disadvantaged situation. Had they whistled for the flagrant when it happened,
Or even just like
fine.
whistled a foul at all.
Yes, any
Right.
foul at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
but because Hunter Dickinson decided to stay down before his miraculous recovery, thank God for that. That's the only reason that they even reviewed that play. And then to make the ruling, even if you want to give them the flagrant, which again, nobody seemed to think was a flagrant outside of those three officials and Kansas fans. The fact that there was a two-handed push off ahead of the game winner and that Dickinson very clearly shuffled his feet, took 2 steps and then switched his pivot feet. And Andy pointed this out on Twitter and he was like, well, there was an official just 2 feet away that didn't make that call. And I was like, thank you for proving my point that there is some very dubious officiating in that building. And I get it. Like they want to get out of there alive. I can respect that. But it's unfortunate that TCU played their most complete game of the season. That Trey Tennyson, who I fell in love with when we watched them practice, before the season began, had that kind of breakout game. That Jamie Dixon had a great game plan for Kansas, and that they were so close to being able to pull off what would have been a massive, massive win for TCU, and to have it end like that with so much controversy is super disappointing.
Yeah, and I wrote about this in my post-game report as well. I basically said it doesn't really matter which side of that call you land on, whether you agree with it or not. The disappointment that I felt afterwards is that a game that had 26 lead changes where neither team ever led by more than 2 possessions, the only thing people talked about afterwards was the officiating. And that
Yep.
was so disappointing because it was an incredible basketball game. An incredible
It's a
basketball game.
blast. It's a great
Both
game.
teams were moving the ball the way they wanted to, both in transition and in the half court. There were some incredible defensive moments. There were threes with hands and faces and incredible post-up moves. And it was just such a fun, good basketball game. And to that point, with only a minute left, I think they had only called like 12 total fouls, 13
Yeah.
total fouls in the game. Like it was a really clean, physically just active basketball game that everybody should have come away talking about for the game itself. And instead, everyone's been talking about the officiating, and it's happening more and more and more across sports in general.
Yeah.
Look at the Cowboys Lions end of the game. You talked about the Georgetown basketball game already this year, right? I mean, time and time again, it feels like the conversation turns to officiating rather than the actual game itself. And so to have such a great game marred by that once again, it was really disappointing. That being said, you nailed it when you said the TCU played probably their most complete game of the year. Trey Tennyson needs to start from here on out. He started the last 3 games. He has done an incredible job from week 1 to now defensively and doing some of the intangible stuff, protecting the basketball when he's got it, not being turnover prone like some of the other TCU guards have been to this point this season. He's got to be your starting 2 guard from here on out until someone rips that job away from him.
How does he? I know Kansas was obviously glued to him, but man, how does he not get the ball on that last possession? And I want to say, like, I thought Jameer Nelson did some really incredible things off the bench. I thought that his pull-up game was really, really good.
He's looked much better since coming off the bench.
Looked a lot more comfortable in that role. I don't know what the final play call was. I don't know what the expectation was. I don't mind him shooting that shot.
Yeah.
But he didn't get a chance to get his feet set. I would have loved to have seen something with some type of action with a Micah PV screen or Emmanuel Miller or something to get that ball and to try to free up Trey Tennyson for that shot, because he was absolutely unconscious in that second half.
I need to go back and rewatch the final play, but at first look, I thought they ran essentially the same action that they ran against Georgetown. They just ran it with Jameer instead of Emmanuel because of the way that it was defended. And so I think Jameer was the second option on that play, and he gets the ball and he runs down the sideline. And I think because I can't remember who was in front of him. There was a frog in front of him that was probably supposed to screen that guy off a little bit more
and didn't do it
and didn't quite get to that spot in time. I think it was an execution thing. I agree. I think that getting the ball in the hot shooter's hands would have been ideal in that situation. I'm not necessarily upset with
Yeah,
the call and the
it
action
wasn't a
itself.
bad,
The
yeah, it wasn't a
execution just
bad,
wasn't quite
yeah,
there.
yeah. It like, and again, like I think at that point too, you're so deflated. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard. Like I just, I would have loved to have seen that game play out. If TCU loses that game without the controversy, then I think every TCU fan is going, okay, we're a little bit better than we thought we were, a little bit
Right.
more prepared. And I still think that's ultimately comes
Mm-hmm.
away. I guess the one silver lining of losing a game that way with that much controversy is when seedings come around and pick your bubble teams come around. Hopefully TC gets a little bit of a benefit of the doubt. What they can do now though is control how they respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a top 10 Oklahoma team that you and I both probably think maybe is a little bit overrated
Yeah.
comes to town on Wednesday. A very good team, but a team that TC matches up with really well. They've got Oklahoma and Houston this week. Houston looks like an absolute juggernaut. But if they can get this win at home on Wednesday and kind of get themselves right from this game and shake off kind of the bad feelings, this is still a team that can win a lot of games in the Big 12 and can make themselves a tournament team. And at the end of the day, that loss isn't going to matter if they can go and recover from it and win on Wednesday night. Because I think if you had told me coming into the Big 12 play that they were 1-1 after 2 against top 10 Oklahoma and number 2 or 3 Kansas, then I would have been like, oh, great, outstanding, super happy with that.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're right. The TCU I think is a good matchup with Oklahoma. Oklahoma is a little bit more turnover prone. They're okay with running up and down the court a little bit, which we talked about before we started recording. If you want to get into a track meet with this TCU basketball team, they're going to absolutely welcome that
Yeah.
because this is a deadly, deadly, deadly offense in transition. And the best part about this transition offense is that they've progressed week over week in understanding when the opportunity to run is there and when they need to get
Mm-hmm.
into their half court offense a little bit more quickly. That's something that
Yeah.
Jamie Dixon has talked about over the last few weeks, and we saw that against Kansas
Yeah.
really,
Beautifully
really well,
executed.
where there were
Mm-hmm.
3-on-5, 3-on-4 opportunities where maybe you can push it, but it's not a great idea. And instead, what they did was they settled into a quick half court offense, moved the ball really well, and either got a look inside because of a guard driving or a wide open three from Tennyson. And that's the kind of fast action that you have to have where you can allow that transition threat to give you open looks in the half court. That's something that they really didn't do in non-conference as well as maybe they could have, but it was great to see that against Kansas. Also, on a side note, I don't know how good Kansas's guard play really is this year
Yeah.
because they've got probably the best player in the league in Hunter Dickinson. Say what you want about him. He's an incredible post player. They've got, KJ Adams, who's another freak athletically. They've got Kevin McCullough, who's another possibly the best player in the conference kind of player. And then, you've got DeJuan Harris, you've got a couple other guards, but really it's the forwards and it's the front court that is the strength of this Kansas team. Their backcourt is a little suspicious for Kansas. I
Yeah.
will say for Kansas,
Yeah.
it's a different level of thing there, but I'll be interested to see if TCU's guard play can continue to pick up where they left off on Wednesday because they had, I think, collectively a really strong day.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that they can get, obviously missing Jacoby Coles was a big hurt
Mm-hmm.
them. And I think, the rebounding probably wasn't the level that we expect to see from TCU. I think, Uday had some really, really great moments in that game. And there were a couple moments, especially on defense, where he looked a little bit lost. He's a guy that's getting better every single week. But he is
Yeah.
nowhere near the type of player that, I think we all expected to be a year from now. Anything he
Yes.
contributes at this point is a bonus. But I would love to see him be a little bit more aggressive on the boards. That's going to be really important against Oklahoma.
He's 19,
Yeah.
which is crazy to me. He's 19 years
Yeah.
old, and he only averaged like 8 minutes a game last year, right?
Yeah.
And so this is a kid who's still really learning how to
Well, he's
play.
he's 20 as of like today or yesterday.
That's
Did he
true
just
today.
turn?
Monday, happy
Yeah.
birthday to Ernest Uday
Yeah.
Jr.
Yeah.
He is now 20 years old, no longer a teenager. Um, but yeah, still really learning the college
Yeah.
game, I think. And I trust Tony Benford with any big
Mm-hmm.
man that wants to come through the program,
For
frankly.
sure. For
I mean,
sure.
that guy is a miracle worker with big men, and you could put a naturally gifted and athletic freak like Ernest Uday in his hands as
Yeah.
clay to mold, and that's
Good
going to
things
be,
are
I
going to
think, a really
happen.
fun thing to watch develop.
What was something fun that I didn't necessarily watch develop, but that I was surprised by over the Christmas break?
What's
We
that?
mentioned one of our sponsors, our friends at Hell's Half Acre sent gift cards to every single person that made a purchase in 2023,
Hmm.
commiserate with the amount of purchases you made. I thought that was a pretty dang cool thing to do.
It was super
I'm
neat.
super excited to spend my gift card and get some new gear. They have incredible baseball gear, all of the great stuff that you need for your tailgate, to get yourself ready for the baseball season, for hitting up some basketball games here this winter. They company by Horned Frogs for Horned Frogs. They support TCU's NIL ventures, something we were discussing earlier, and just make really, really high quality, really great looking apparel,
Yes.
koozies, flags, all of the things. I know we both have quite a few items there from our friends at Hell's Half Acre Stadium Goods. I encourage everybody to check them out for sure.
They're the place you need to go to get ready for a TCU game day, just because of all the different kinds of things that you mentioned, Melissa. They've got so much good stuff over there. I actually had this was unintentional, but I had the little new Horned Frog Head logo polo
Mm-hmm.
on at work today, and yeah, so
Pretty sick.
turns out I've inadvertently repped both of our sponsors in the same day. So
Way to go.
I'm
That's
doing
how we do
everything I
it.
can. I'm doing everything I can over here to rep the brands.
That's how we do it. So last thing we got to touch on is, we said Saturday was a tough day for TCU basketball. It's a tough day for TCU women, who dropped their first Big 12 game of the year and first game of the year to Oklahoma State. Um,
Second,
or second
second,
game,
yep.
second. Sorry, I forgot about the Baylor game. Because Sedona Prince broke her finger. It turns out on the first, I think the first play, she said,
Mm-hmm.
of the game at Baylor in Waco. Had surgery on Friday and is going to be out for an undisclosed period of time. I watched pretty much the entirety of that game against Oklahoma State. It was a home game, and the Frogs looked completely just disillusioned and disheveled, I think, without Sedona Prince. I mean, she is so impactful on both ends of the floor. They still fought, they still played with good energy, but obviously rebounding was a big problem. Oklahoma State is always big. They're always super aggressive. They're always physical. They had a great post player that I think Sedona would have handled with ease, but they were unable to slow down Oklahoma both inside and outside, and made a couple runs, got it within a few points a few times, but could never really break under that 5 point margin, and fell at home to the Cowgirls. Tough break for this team that had so much positive momentum, played so well against Baylor in that first half before kind of getting Baylored in the second half, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
now looking back too, with knowing what happened to Sedona Prince, I think we all can kind of see why she struggled a little bit in that game, playing with a shorn in half finger pretty much. It's unfortunate. I think this team can still make some noise in the Big 12. It'll be interesting to see when Prince is able to come back. That could be something that keeps her out for the rest of the regular season. It could be something where she could be back in a few weeks. It's just going to depend how her healing progresses. She's obviously got an injury history, and knows how to rehab and knows how to attack that process.
True.
So I have a lot of faith that she will do everything she can to be out there as soon as possible. And this is, her last run at college basketball. So, she wants to be out there. But Mark Campbell's going to have to make some adjustments. He's going to have to figure things out. They played a lot of zone, and Oklahoma State just absolutely ate them up. But without Prince in the middle, that zone looks pretty rough. They've played a lot of zone all season. It's been effective with her, but I think we'll have to see if they can switch over to play some more man to man. And it's going to be interesting. Someone's going to have to step up. I mean,
Yeah.
that's thing. Madison Connor, it was great. I thought she did a great job attacking. They really did not want to let her shoot the three, of course, but she got to the rim, and was really, really aggressive. But somebody else is going to have to step up alongside Connor and kind of fill the void. You're not going to probably get 20 and 12 from any singular player, but if everybody can increase their presence, both in the scoring and on the rebounding and the box score, I think that this team can still be really competitive in the conference.
I think so too. And you've still got Jaden Owens running the point. She had a double double on Saturday as well. You've got Agnes Eminopu, who's a really good interior presence, an incredible rebounder, hustle player as well. The question really is, how much is this going to test the already limited depth
Yeah.
on the bench, right? Because you have Sydney Harris, who transferred in from Central Michigan, who still hasn't played yet this year. You've got a couple other folks who I mean, you have a thinner roster than maybe you
Yeah.
normally do. And it's tends to happen in year one under a new head coach. So it'll be interesting to see how the depth holds up. If they have another injury to a key starter, I just don't know that they would be able to recover from that.
Yeah.
Having already lost such a big piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, it's just such a bummer because they are so fun to watch. They're so exciting to watch. There was so much enthusiasm around the program, and you just really hope that that doesn't fall off completely in
Mm-hmm.
light of Prince's injury. So, they'll I'm trying to look at their schedule here really quickly because I cannot remember. I'm obviously not on my A game right now, but they get to travel to number 10 Texas
Mm.
on Wednesday. Men will have Oklahoma at home. Women will be at Texas. That's obviously a tough game. Texas also has had their injury issues. And then they can maybe have a chance to regroup at home against, or they go at Houston on Saturday. So it's
Yeah.
not an easy stretch. It's a really, really good conference for women's basketball, just like it is on the men's side. And so things won't be easy. But I think this is why you hire Mark Campbell, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
nobody expected this team to be ranked in the top 25 in year one. They've already kind of overachieved to this point, but they've also kind of given you a taste of what they can be at full strength. And so if he can just kind of keep the boat afloat here for a few weeks, and maybe Prince can come back and maybe best case scenario 3 to 4 weeks, then they can still make some noise. But what they can't do is completely fall off the map. I think that would be super disappointing for everybody involved.
Yeah, I think so too. But at the same time, like you said, they've already exceeded expectations. They looked incredible with a full roster, and um, I think there's still some
For sure.
salvageability. We're gonna make up a word,
Yeah.
salvageability
I made
to
up
the
like
remainder
seven
of the
words
season.
earlier, so I think that's completely and totally
Yeah, there we
reasonable
go.
and acceptable.
Perfect.
Yeah.
You love to see it.
Love
All
to.
right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Frogs Insider Podcast. After all, we do have the rest of the national championship to go watch.
Yeah.
Washington has surprisingly kind of recovered from
Yeah.
a
One
few
score game.
early haymakers from Michigan. We're
Yeah.
going to see if that holds up over here. But to all of those of you who are listening to this, thank you so much. Thank you, as always, to Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Hell's Half Acre Stadium Goods, and Home Field Apparel for partnering with us in a variety of different ways. You can find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, podcasts, whatever, some newfangled podcast thing that I don't understand as an older man. Wherever you get them, you can find them. And you can also find us on our YouTube channel over at Frogs Insider, where you can watch this episode and see all of the video content we're creating over there as well. So until next time, just until next time, go Frogs.
Go Frogs.